I didn't record the beginning because I forgot, and Alex just reminded me, but luckily we didn't get into any of the good stuff yet. So we will go on from there. Alex, how many people have a field guide? Can you let me know?
I don't know how to drop it.
What is it? I'm sorry.
I don't know how to drop something, whatever you're.
Oh, so are you on mobile or are you on computer?
iPad.
iPad. So at the bottom of the screen, there should be a chat bubble. Do you see that?
No.
She's on iPad.
It should be say more ...
Do you see 3 dots that says more?
On top.
Click that. Is there an option for chat there?
Yeah, I got it. It was on top, not on bottom.
Oh, it's on the top on the iPad. Sorry. Yeah, I haven't used Zoom on the iPad, so I'm not super familiar with it, but awesome. So let's see. That was awesome information. Oh, thank you, Bev. Glad that you figured that out about the glasses. That's amazing. Okay, so a lot of you have pocket guides, which is great. So we will go on. The bird shapes that I supplied you guys with, that is honestly just so you can get used to silhouettes of birds. A lot of times we will have backlit birds, so all you can see is the general shape until they fly away and you catch some colors. So all that is just to get you a working knowledge of how different birds are shaped, because that's a really good way to start learning how to identify birds. Okay, so 4 of you guys, good deal. So you guys will be able to really get something out of the field guide portion here. So field guides, there are a lot of different types of field guides. I think I have 6 or 7 on this slide alone. And then some of you guys dropped in the chat that you had different ones than what are on this slide, which is great. As far as my preferences, I prefer a smaller sized field guide so you can just take it on the go. Where I have a lot of examples here, so I'll show you guys some different examples. National Geographic field guide, great. So one of the big differences in most field guides is how the birds look. Some field guides have drawings of birds, and then some have photos of birds. And there are benefits to both of those. But for my purposes, I really prefer the drawings of birds. What happens with a picture of a bird sometimes is that the lighting in the picture can be off, and therefore it can kind of make the bird look different than what you're actually looking at in person. Drawings are more of the ideal shape, body, color of what that bird should look like. There's no shadows, there's no play of light, it's just the bird. So that's why I like that better. You can kind of see more detail in the drawings. They do a good job of pointing out exactly what you should be looking for. And let me pull up an example here. So this is a Sibley's. This is what I mainly use. I prefer Sibley or Peterson. But these birds are drawn. There's no shadows, there's nothing, there's no light, it's just a drawing. And then on the flip side of that, we have, oh, where'd my one with the pictures go? We have this Audubon guide here, and there are actual photos here. So these pictures are pretty good. This is good lighting for these ducks. So this one's not too bad, but sometimes there'll be a shadow casted. This is a really good example right here. There's a shadow on the breast of this bird. So the coloring is already going to be a little bit off than what you'd see in person potentially. So another thing to look for is east versus west. If you're like me and you're running in the bookstore to grab something real quick and you're not paying much attention, it is really easy to accidentally pick up a Sibley's West instead of a Sibley's East if you're not paying attention. This one, it has it really small on there. So you could easily mistake this for a different one. Then the newer editions, they made it real nice and big and obvious what field guide this is. I accidentally bought the West one when I was going to get my first field guide, but it worked out in the end for me because now I bird out West and I already had it. So that's a good thing. You can also get field guides that are of all of North America. That can tend to be overwhelming for some new birders because that's a lot of information. That's a lot of birds that you may never see. You may never travel to those certain places. So I recommend for beginners, try to narrow it down. There are even field guides that are state specific. If you look on this slide, the one at the top right says Birds of Kentucky Field Guide. That field guide is organized by color. If you're somebody that learns better that way, rather than organizing birds by their family, so their taxonomy, I recommend that one. It's simple, it's very small, it's about this big. It's a good coffee table book if you bird out of your backyard. And it's a great one for kids. If you have kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews, they really enjoy this book because it is separated by color if you're going to be birding with your family. So I recommend that. Also, if you have a smartphone, download ID apps as well. That way, in case you forget your guide or you're out at lunch with a friend and a bird stops by that you've never seen, you can whip out your phone really quick and hopefully get an ID on it. The app that I use most frequently is going to be Merlin Bird ID, and that's the logo that I have on this screen. So that's what you're looking at right there is going to be that Merlin Bird ID app. And Alex just typed it into the chat for you guys in case you want to download it, exactly how it's spelled and how it looks on the App Store. And that one is great because it has everything you need. It has range maps, it has sounds, it has female versus male. So I really recommend downloading that. And I think, does anyone have any questions about field guides so far? Just went over a lot there. If you travel around Kentucky a lot and visit our state parks, I recommend picking these up wherever you go. These are little trifold, well, there's more than 3, but these are little folded pamphlets that you can buy or pick up. Yes, yeah, so Terry has one down there. That's perfect, yeah. And these are great for beginners too, because pretty much every bird that you could see at Land Between the Lakes is in this pamphlet. It's small, you can put it in your pocket, and it's really light. So these are great if you're going on a trip with your family. Pick one of these up wherever you're at. And then, of course, you can get even more specific if you really get into it and get a big, thick field guide that's all about one type of birds. So we are not going to go over warblers today because that's advanced, and I'm still learning a lot of warblers, especially their sound. But if you get into it, you can actually separate field guides into specific species. So for that, we will move on to tips. So the biggest advice I can give you when you are birding and you're new, field guides can be overwhelming, especially if you have a thick Peterson's or a Sibley's. Familiarize yourself with that field guide before you go out. When I got my first one, I didn't go out right away with my field guide. I actually sat at home, and when I was bored, instead of picking up my Stephen King novel, I picked up my Peterson field guide book and flipped through it so I could get a feel for how it's laid out. I marked certain pages of birds that I already knew. I dog-eared it where I thought I might come back to that. So like the raptor, where the raptors start in the field guide, I have that marked so that I can quickly open it if I don't know a raptor that I'm looking at. And it's super accessible right then and there. When you're out birding and you see a bird that you don't know, don't get your field guide out right away. Take a beat, take a few seconds, because that bird's going to fly away. So only get out your field guide after it's flown away, unless it's sitting at a feeder and you have all day to look at it, because you want to gather as many mental details about that bird as you can before you get out your field guide. Because what happens is that bird's sitting in front of you and you pick it up and you're looking at it, and then when you look up, it's gone. So you only have a couple details about it, whereas you could gather more and then get your field guide out later and try to figure out what it was. So I recommend just taking a few seconds and gathering color, pattern, details, things like that. Use range maps. If you learn anything from me today, always look at your range map on your field guide. I have an example here. So what I have is a wren. This is a Carolina wren if you're in your backyard, and it is summertime. It is June, and you see a wren because it's got that fat little plump body and that short tail that sticks up. What you're going to do is, if you don't know which wren it is, we have two species that live here pretty much all year round. That's going to be your Carolina and your house wren. We have a winter wren that comes in the wintertime that kind of looks similar to this guy, but you can automatically mark that one off because it's not wintertime. And that you can do that by looking at the range maps. That helps you narrow down your options as far as migrating birds go. If they're not here that time of year, that's not what you're looking at. So definitely utilize that. These screenshots are from the Merlin Bird ID app. It's very clear, very easy to use. At the bottom of the range map, you can see the key, the colors down there. This Carolina wren is here all year round. And that's all you got to know about it is he's here all the time. Lastly, for field guides, they also have behavior tips. If you notice a bird is doing something weird, or maybe it's climbing up the tree and you haven't seen, like you've probably never seen a cardinal climb up the tree, so we can mark that off. But if you see a bird climbing up the tree or pumping its tail, sitting on a branch and doing this over and over and over again, that's a key identifier. That's a behavior that only certain birds do. So that's another way. And all of that, flight, the way they fly is even in some field guides. So if you see a bird in flight and it's flying strange, you can use that as a key as well. So if you have your field guide on you, go ahead and get it out. We're just going to do a little exercise to kind of get you guys familiar with it. What I want you to do is take a second, go to your field guide and find what page the corvid family starts on. So most field guides are organized by taxonomy. So their family or their order usually starts with order and goes from there. So find the corvid family. And as a hint, that's going to be your crows and jays. So if your field guide is organized by common name, look for crows and jays, and then just type in the page number that what you find. We'll just take a couple seconds. All right, 579 for Joanne. Joanne, which field? You have Audubon. Okay, you have an Audubon one. Great.
Right.
Open that chat again. Mary Kay, you have a Nat Geographic. Samantha, do you have the Birds of Kentucky one that I was talking about earlier? Is that the one that you have? Yes, okay. Your book is, yep, that's the one. Awesome. So Mary Kay, yours is on 318. Okay, great. So now you kind of have a feeling for that. Next, find the peregrine falcon. Find what page that's on, and then I want you to tell me in the chat one key identifier that your field guide has marked for a peregrine falcon. Oh, awesome. Okay, so Vanessa is downloading the Merlin app. If you don't have your field guide and you want to download that real quickly, please feel free to do so while everybody's looking.
And under falcon?
Peregrine falcon is what you're looking for. And then tell me a key identifier. There should be a couple of different options for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Crown and neck black, okay. Anything else? There's something specific that I'm looking for. Yep. Something specific to falcons. Let's see, I'm trying to find what page it's on in mine. 315, 470, 750, okay. Good.
Really like the Jimmy Falcon and the crows have eyes, by the way.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much.
Just wanted to hear it laugh.
Yeah, I know. I'm so glad. Megan, show your face.
Hello.
Hello. Everyone, this is Megan Bagby. She is a Becoming an Outdoors Woman aficionado. If you have any questions about this weekend, send them her way or Olivia Dangler's way. You can send them to me, and I'll just forward it to them.
Absolutely.
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 Let's see the dog.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Yeah, Megan has a puppy.
Where's
She
he
had a
at?
baby and a puppy.
Where's he at? Where is he at? There he is.
Aw.
There. Oh, hey. How you doing, buddy?
Very cute. Very cute. It's the year of the puppies.
Oh,
All
gosh.
right. So we will go ahead and move on. Okay. So
What's a shorter tail?
shorter tail. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So to crow sized, that's a really good identifier. So today we're not going to really be able to talk about size because one, we're virtual, and two, unless you have a bunch of birds lined up together, it's really difficult to compare sizes. So that's great. So let's move on to what are field marks. I keep talking about these identifiers, type in this, type in that. These are field marks. These are what's going to help you identify a lot of birds in the wild. I have a diagram here, and all this is this is just telling you terminology of parts of a bird. This is what you're going to read about in your field guides. So this is a blue jay without color, and you can see it's pretty basic. It's pretty self-explanatory. The breast is different than the belly. The tail is different than the rump. And then you've got your crown and your crest and your head those are all separate parts. And as we go, you'll see me talk about these. But I did want to put this in here for your all's purposes. This is being recorded. You guys will get to go back and look at this later. And then I can email this PowerPoint out at the end if that's something you're interested in. So your field marks are just characteristics that can be seen. There's just stuff you can quickly see and write down or mentally take a note of. So stripes. Maybe your bird has stripes on its belly or breast. Maybe it's got a barred pattern that goes down its breast. Spots. Certain birds have spots on their wings or on their belly or on their back. Colors. Colors are a big thing. We'll go over that in a minute. But color is a big part. And it may not all be one color. It may be multiple colors, so take note of all of those. All right. Okay, color. Put this in here because I think it's hilarious, and two, it's very, very, very true. The more you get into birding, the more you will realize that the color wheel is much larger than what we were ever taught in school. So what is red to somebody else is actually scarlet or flame or rose color to a birder. Rusty brown is different than chestnut. Is different than regular brown, is different than tawny. There are lots of different shades of these base colors that a lot of birds have. So it's important to make note of that as well. And you'll see this kind of come into play when we start talking about identifiers on birds we're going to learn about in a minute. So don't get frustrated with anything. If it seems like there's a lot of options, it's because there are. This just comes with a little bit of practice and a little bit of time. Okay, example time. So you're going to utilize that chat box again. What field marks do you all see on each of these birds? The one at the top will be bird 1. The one at the bottom will be bird 2. Just type it in and I'll read them out as they come in. Just point out the first things you notice on these birds. Color, shape, the bill, whatever you notice first. Okay. Mary Kay says orange belly on the first bird. The color. What else? Anything else jump out at you about each bird? The shape of the bill, okay. What about the colors of the bill? So belly and short orange bill, good. So yeah, yep, that's good. Okay. So let's look at these. First, black head and yellow bill on this bird at the top. Rufous colored breast and belly. Bird at the bottom, he's all blue, except for a little bit of black on the wings. And then he's also got a silver bill. Now, what do we think these birds are? Now that we've discussed their field marks, type in the chat what you think each one is. Now, I would imagine that some of you will get the top one. The bottom one's a little bit more difficult. So if you have your field guide and you don't know what the bottom one is, try to figure it out with that guide now that you have some field marks on it. Okay, Mary Kay says a robin and a bluebird. Robin and a bluebird from Joanne. Any other guesses? Terry, Denise, do you guys have, Vanessa, any guesses? So I will say that you're right about the robin, but that is not a bluebird. Aha, okay, Elizabeth, Denise, Bev, you're right about the robin. Okay, there we go. Vanessa, Sam, and Elizabeth, that is an indigo bunting. That's awesome, great. So we're gonna talk about a lot of blue colored birds and a lot of red colored birds because they're super eye-catching and easy to identify right off the bat, but that is an indigo bunting. And you'll see the difference between that and a bluebird here in just a moment. Great job, guys, that's awesome. Okay, questions so far? Any questions about identifiers, field guides, binoculars? I feel like I'm moving pretty quickly for you guys. We're about to get into the bulk of this information. If you don't have anything, I can move on. Alex will stop me if you guys have a question. Okay, so up until now, we've just been really broad. We've talked about field guides, parts of the bird, but now we're going to learn how to identify common birds. What we're about to go over is based off of a lot of the survey answers. Thank you all so much for participating in that, by the way. I got a lot of responses, and that really helped me form how we do this. So I really appreciate you guys doing that for me. So we're going to go over, at first, our most common, and then we're going to go from there. So our first two birds are invasives. There is another species of invasive birds that you might see, and that's going to be Eurasian collared dove, but we're not going to go over that one because a lot of people don't see that one as often as these two guys. Guarantee you've seen them. You may not know what you were looking at, but I know you all have seen these because they are everywhere. So the one on the left is the house sparrow, and the one on the right is the starling. Now, I have two pictures of each bird, and that's because the ones at the top are the males, and the ones at the bottom are the females. And not every bird that we're going to go over looks different based on male versus female, but a lot of them do. So that can get overwhelming for a lot of people. So what I recommend is you learn the male plumage first. It's just easier to identify them that way and then work your way from there. The females are usually more drab, less colorful, more dull, and that's going to be for a number of reasons, but males are flashy, so they get chosen to be bred with. Females are more dull, so they're less likely to be predated on while they're watching the nest, doing things like that. So that's the reasons for that. So your field marks on your house sparrow here, they have a gray forehead, chestnut behind the eye, the black bill, and the black spot on the chest. We have a lot of sparrow species that are in Kentucky or that come through Kentucky, and we aren't going to talk about those today because they are difficult. That's something you learn after these common birds. But out of all of the sparrow species, he's the easiest to identify. You probably won't mix the male up with any other sparrow species because their face is very obvious, very obvious. The next one is the European starling. They have a bulky body. They have a yellow bill. That yellow bill is really obvious. And their iridescent feathers and black body is really pretty and really obvious as well. We'll talk about some other blackbirds, but this one's really unique because of that yellow bill and those iridescent feathers. Starlings have a funny story, how they were introduced here. Some of you may know it. Back, I believe it was 1890, and I should have looked it up before, but I think it was 1890 in New York. We had a really big group of Shakespeare enthusiasts, and Shakespeare wrote about birds that were around him, so in Europe. These enthusiasts really, really like Shakespeare, and they thought that the United States should have the birds that he wrote about and spoke so highly of. So they brought over about 100 starlings and released them into Central Park. And pretty much every starling that we have in the United States now is a descendant of those first birds, those original birds. These birds, they're not going anywhere. They're established. They live here now. Can't really get rid of them. But that's the story behind those. And then at the bottom, you'll see the 2 female species. And lastly, I did include that just in case. That guy right there is a juvenile starling. This one trips up a lot of people. I'm in some identification groups, and a lot of them post juvenile starlings because they just look so different from the adult. And you'll see that a lot in some of these birds. They're generally just way dull. They're really dull because they haven't gotten that adult plumage in yet. But if you look closely, the bill shape is the same. It's sharp and pointy, and they have those spots down under that wing. Oops. So the female, she's got all those spots on her, and then you look there, and there's those spots. So backyard basics for most. Some people live rural and they have a lot more access to different birds, but these are going to be what most people come into contact with. Everyone on the survey could identify a cardinal. I included him because I didn't want to leave him out because he is our state bird. He's on our logo. They're everywhere, right? And then there's your female. So once again, she's more drab. She still looks like a cardinal. She still has that fantastic crest, that reddish pink bill, and then the reddish pink marks on her wings and on her tail. So they still look the same, just more drab. Second, blue jay. So once again, most people, almost everyone knew this bird, but I did want to include him because he is so common. As far as bluebirds go, he's pretty big. He's got black marks on his tail and wing, and then that black ring around his neck and that magnificent crest as well. Our other bluish birds that we're going to talk about don't have those on them. American robin, you guys have already identified that one and told me the identifiers on him. And there's a female, and I can't remember if that's a female or if that's a juvenile bird, but once again, just that drab color. If you see a robin that's a lighter color, it's just going to be that juvenile. This guy is a mourning dove. Most people have at least seen one or heard one. They're the ones early in the morning that make the really solemn, almost owl sounding call. Lots of folks confuse them for an owl because they kind of, it's not a hoot, it's more of a coo than a hoot. But that's those guys. They're called a mourning dove because their sound does sound like they are in mourning. They're very sad. They sound very sad. But they're plump little birds. You usually find these guys sitting on power lines. That's where I see most doves, or in a field on the ground hunting for their food. And lastly, this guy is the grackle. They're really common at backyard feeders. A lot of people have experiences with them being kind of aggressive and chasing off their smaller birds. And that is something that they will do, and they kind of flock up together. But these are pretty easy to identify based off of that white eye alone. That white eye is really obvious. They have a bigger bill, a blue iridescent head, and then the rest of their body is black or brown, but also iridescent. But he looks a lot different than that starling does. Starling has that yellow bill, he does not. And he's a little bit bigger than the starling. And there's you, a female. She still has that white eye. Look a little bit different, drab, but still has the white eye. Okay, so we have lots of birds that are black in Kentucky, and you just learned the one at the top left, but you may not know the other ones, and that's okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to guess which one is the crow, okay? So I put the field marks in there for you guys already. It has a heavy straight bill, and it's all black, the head, the body, the legs, the bill, all black, and it's big. This bird is going to be twice the size of your other blackbirds, so it'll be really obvious if you see it in the wild. So if you want, tell me in the chat which one you think is the American crow. Okay, got a couple of answers. Okay, Samantha and Elizabeth, top right, top right. Vanessa, top right. Denise, far right. Okay, yeah, you guys got it. Yep. The last group got this pretty quick too. It's pretty impressive. That's him right there. Now, does anyone know what the other two birds are that we did not identify already?
I know him.
Would you say, Joanne?
I have a wing of that bird. I know him, but I don't know his name.
Yeah, so
You got 2 answers.
two answers. Red-winged blackbird is correct. Yep, that's it. That's it. Oh, okay, Samantha, look at you. The bottom left is a cowbird. So the bottom left bird is a brown-headed cowbird. They have a brown head. This one, once you see it one time, you will know it because the brown head is actually really obvious in person. In this picture, it's kind of actually dull, but in person, it's obvious. They also make a really interesting sound. It's a little metallic-y trill. So once you download that app, look up their sound, and once you hear it, you'll know that one. That one's easy to remember. So good job. You guys are on it. Okay, so now we're going to get into the birds that some of you probably or may not know. So these are your fun backyard birds, I think. These are some of my favorite birds to see. And we'll start with this guy. This is the Carolina wren. I used him as a picture earlier. I used him as an example for the field guide. These are one of my favorites. They make a tea kettle call. So they're easy to hear. They're very loud. Tea kettle is exactly what they sound like for the most part. So they're easy to identify by sound as well. Their field marks are going to be that white eye stripe. If you look at their tail is barred. So if you look closely, it's got little black barred lines all the way down it. And this picture doesn't do it justice, but that bird, if that bird's sitting, this is the bird, his tail is usually like this. It is straight up into the air, okay? He looks like this. In the picture, it's more flat, but they usually sit like this. So that's another giveaway, is that the tail stands upright, and he's got a plump body with a sharp, down-curved bill. So his bill looks a little bit different than the ones we've seen so far. Okay, this is one of my all-time favorites. They are honestly probably the cutest backyard bird you'll have. They are called a tufted titmouse, and they're called that because if you look, they have a tiny little tufted crest. So this bird is obviously different than the other birds with crests that we've talked about so far. So this is not a cardinal or a blue jay, but you do know he has a crest. He's got a soft gray back with white underneath. And if you look closely, under his wing is a rufous patch. So a little brown rufous patch, and then the black patch above the bill that sits right here. They also have tiny little dark eyes. These guys, once you see them at your feeder, you'll know these guys. They make a pita call. They sound, or Peter, if you prefer that. That's how they sound. Okay, this guy is big. This is going to be one of the bigger birds we talk about in this group of birds here. This is a northern mockingbird, and I've included both pictures because in this picture, he is sitting comfortable and it looks like it's the winter time, so he's got his feathers puffed out. Birds can make themselves look bigger than what they actually are, so this is a good example of that. He's got his feathers puffed out, he's nice and warm, nice and comfortable, and in this photo, he's flying. He looks a lot more slender and slicked down in this picture, and that's why I included it, is because the field marks are more obvious in flight for me if you look at that big white wing patch, and it's hard to tell, but he's got white tail feathers on the outsides of his tail. The two outside feathers are white. And when he's sitting, you can kind of see where the white patch on the wing would be. He's gray all over and has a nice white breast. And his tail is long, so in flight, it's really obvious. His tail is about as long as his body is, and a lot of the birds we talk about today will not have a tail that long. Okay, next is the Carolina chickadee. They are very, very small. They have a very large head. This bird's head looks about the same size as his body is. He's got a black cap and a black chin, and then white cheeks. So the black and white on this bird is really contrasting, so that makes it pretty easy to identify him. Whereas the titmouse, he's gray and kind of, gray and white, and it kind of all blends together when you get to the face. He is much more defined in his coloration, as well as this guy right here. This is your white-breasted nuthatch. So chickadees and nuthatches can easily be confused because they kind of have similar coloring going on here. The main differences are that the white-breasted nuthatch has a stark white breast, and only the black cap goes from here down to the neck. Whereas on the chickadee, he's got a black chin as well. They also have a bluish gray back, and they have a really sharp pointed bill. The chickadee's bill is real tiny and short, whereas the white-breasted nuthatch is long and pointy. Okie dokie. Anybody have any questions about these guys so far? For the most part, these are pretty self-explanatory. A few of them kind of look the same, but in person, you'll see these identifiers really easily. Okay, so our blue versus our red birds. And like I said earlier, I included this just because personally, I feel like it's really easy to start with bright, vibrant colors when you're first starting out learning birds. It makes things a little bit easier, rather than starting with your birds that are just all brown with very minor differences. So the first one, we've already talked about an indigo bunting. These birds are probably the most vibrant blue out of any of the blue ones that we will talk about. They're usually found in fields, agricultural areas, forest edges that back up to property. They'll enjoy that as well. They will come to feeders in your backyard as long as there's enough room and they're not being outcompeted by other guys. This is your eastern bluebird. So you guys that were guessing this earlier, it's really easy to understand why you would. I like the bluebird, but he's not all blue. And so the name is a little bit misleading. It can be misleading if you have never actually seen one. You would think he would be all blue, but they're not. He's got a lot of that rufous coloring on him, right around the neck a little bit, down into the breast, and then that lower belly is white. Okay, this one, not a lot of people have gotten the chance to see. Myself, I have actually not seen one of these, but I have a lot of buddies that have seen them. This is a blue grosbeak. If you look at all three of these birds compared together, side by side, his bill is the biggest and the most defined. It's really obvious that he is not a bluebird or a bunting just based off of that heavy bill alone. He's also got a rufous wing patch. So that brown wing patch right there is a good giveaway that you're looking at a blue grosbeak, okay? And these will visit feeders as well. And his counterpart is the rose-breasted grosbeak. Now, he's not all red, but I do include him just because when spring migration comes around and we start getting all of our spring migrator birds back into Kentucky, these are usually one of the first guys to show up. They start coming in late February, early March some years, and that's your sign that it's time to break out the binoculars and the field guide because the migrators are coming. And they are very pretty and very brilliant in person. I really like these guys. That black is very jet black, and the white wing bars combined with the red stripe down the breast is really obvious. If you look, they both have that heavy bill. That grosbeak name is pretty fitting. They got that big, huge bill. Okay, so I'm going to put both these up together. These birds are similar, but different. The main difference, of course, is going to be the black wing and the black tail on that scarlet tanager. So we got a scarlet up top and a summer tanager on the bottom. Now, cardinals are all red as well. So cardinals can be easily confused, or summer tanagers can be easily confused with cardinals just because they're the same color pretty much all over. Cardinals have that crest, though, and that crest is pretty obvious all the time. They will show it off if they're angry or if they're communicating or if they're trying to get a mate, but it's pretty much there all the time. Even if it's slicked back, you can still see that he has a crest. This guy, smooth head, smooth all the way back. And in person, his red is a little bit more brilliant and vibrant than our cardinal red is. Our cardinal red is a more muted red in person, whereas these two guys are really brilliant and very bright. Any questions about our blue and our red birds so far?
How big is he relative to a cardinal?
Yeah, that's a good question. They're about the same size, maybe just a little bit smaller, because if you look, their tails aren't as long as a cardinal's tail may be. But also, once again, this picture of the scarlet tanager is a little misleading because his feathers are fluffed out. So when you're learning your birds, I definitely recommend looking at different pictures of them just so you can see the differences in maybe them being in the wintertime and being in the summertime when they're slicked back. And they'll puff up like that if they're comfortable. If they're sitting on a perch and they're nice and comfortable as well, they'll do that in that case too. But if you look on your Merlin Bird ID app, if you guys download that, they actually have a way you can search birds by shape and size. So if you, let's say you see a scarlet tanager, but you're not sure what it is, you can put in the information of the bird and it will generate possibilities for you. And they do size. Oh, hold on one second. I got people in the waiting room, Olivia and Beth. Okay. So that's a good way to do that as well. Like I said earlier, it's hard for me to talk about size with you guys unless I use my hands. And even then, you don't really have a good idea of how big this is. But yeah, I would say about cardinal sized, if not just a tiny bit smaller. You
said they puff up when they're relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that typical of all birds?
Yeah. Birds of prey. Birds of prey are really tricky. So if you see a red-tailed hawk sitting on a fence post, okay, and he might be puffed out because he's comfortable, or he may be hunting and paying attention and slicked down. I work with birds of prey back at the Salado Center. So as far as behavior goes, I have a lot of experience with bird behavior, specifically birds of prey. But yes, for most birds, they will kind of puff out their feathers if they're nice and comfortable, if they're just hanging out. If they're foraging, they're going to be normal. They're going to look normal as they would, for instance, this summer tanager down here. This is normal. That's what they mostly look like. And I tried to include different ways, different looks of these birds so that you guys can understand that it's always going to be different. Not every scarlet tanager is going to look the same. Even though they are the same bird, they may just look different based on the time of year. Maybe they're molting and they look messy. Birds lose their feathers once a year, sometimes twice if they've gotten a lot of feather damage. They have to regrow those feathers. And if they're in the middle of molt and you see one, it can throw off everything. Cardinals specifically will do this, where they will molt all their head feathers and nothing else. So they will be totally bald on the head and it looks like a zombie bird. But yeah, so crazy molt patterns can throw you off as well. Those are good questions, Mary Kay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on. Okay, I got a lot of requests in the survey to talk about owls. If I had time, I would go over all of our birds of prey, but I don't because we're already down to 30 minutes left. So let's go over our owls. And you guys, most people have had some sort of an experience with an owl where they've seen it, heard it, or thought they've seen one. So we're gonna go over all of our different owl species here. So we have 4 in Kentucky that live here all year round. Then we have a few that we might see in migration. So first let's talk about our resident species. And I'm gonna go by size. We're gonna go from smallest to largest. Our smallest is gonna be the eastern screech owl. He is little. So as far as size goes, I'm gonna compare with my face here. He probably stands about this tall, full grown, okay? They're little guys. They're very small. They're not baby owls. They are full-grown eastern screech owls. These guys come in different colors as well. So the one you're looking at here is a gray morph. This is a red morph. In Kentucky, we have 3, a gray, a red, and a tawny or a brown morph. And there are not a lot of good pictures of brown morph screech owls. So I didn't include one because I didn't want to use a bad picture and it confuse you guys. So red and gray are going to be your main two colorations. I've actually only ever seen gray in the wild. So the day that I see a red phase, I will be super excited. The gray phase blends in really well with tree bark. If you're not paying attention, you won't see them, but you may hear them. Each owl in Kentucky can be identified purely by its sound. They all four sound different. Two of them are hoot owls, so what you think an owl would sound like, hooting, and two of them are not. So this guy's called a screech owl, but he does not screech. He makes a whinny noise, and if you guys want, I can try to do it. I did it yesterday, and everyone thought it was hilarious, but did somebody say do it?
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay. The masses want it. So they make a whinny. It's almost like a hoarse trill. It's like a woo, woo. So that's what they sound like. And
Very
a lot
good.
of people, thank you. A lot of people can actually have heard that before and know that one as soon as they found out what that is. So they're pretty common. They really like edge habitats. So anywhere where one habitat meets another. So a forest may meet a field, and that's where they like to hang out because while they are predators, they're also a prey. So other owls may eat these guys if given the chance because they're very small. So our next one is a barn owl. So we have two owls that start with B's, Barn and Bard. Barn is the smaller of the two, and she is very obvious, okay? That heart-shaped face, the white on her face and on her breast, and the speckled back and wings. She is probably the most unique looking owl we have in Kentucky. These guys are called barn owls because they frequently nest in old structures, old buildings, abandoned barns, things like that. These guys are cool too because they swallow every single prey they eat whole. So they will only eat something that they can swallow whole. Other birds of prey will cut up pieces and shred it with their beak while holding it in their talons. She does not. She just knocks the whole thing back. They're probably doing the worst out of all of our owl species. So if you do see one and you know you've seen one, you can report it to Fish and Wildlife because they are tracking down nest sites for these guys. They're not doing as well. They have a very short lifespan. Okay. This is our barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D. Oh, and as far as call goes for the barn owl, they have a really high-pitched tea kettle call. It sounds like a tea kettle you need to take off the stove. This one's really hard for me to do, and I didn't do a good job yesterday, but she's going to make it's more of a hissing tea kettle, like a noise. I can't do it. My voice is too low-pitched, but she sounds the scariest out of everyone. People run out of the woods if they hear a barn owl. So your barred owl is going to be your first traditional hoot owl species. So he is going to make a call that says, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So that's what they sound like. They will make a lot of noises back and forth to each other that almost sounds like monkeys calling to one another in the woods. It's called caterwauling. So if you hear multiple owls going back and forth, it's probably a barred owl. They really like marshy, wooded areas, heavy forested areas, and these birds will wade into the water and go fishing for fish and crayfish. And that's one of my favorite things about them is, most of our raptors are rodent generalists, or they will eat other birds, but these guys will wade into the water up to their thighs and try to go fishing for some stuff. And lastly, the great horned owl. This is what most people recognize as an owl in Kentucky. They're the biggest. They're one of our baddest predators in the state. Cool story. Well, it's kind of sad, but it's a cool story. Back when we as a department were hacking bald eagles back into Kentucky, we were trying to get the population back up after all of our nesting pairs died off or moved away. And we finally had a nesting pair of eagles. They mated, they laid eggs, the eggs hatched, and then a great horned owl came in and ate the babies. So these guys will prey on other birds of prey. They're also one of the only predators known to routinely eat skunks. So skunks' main defense is smell, a bad smell. So a fox or a coyote that can smell really well is not going to go for them. But an owl who hunts by sight and sound doesn't care about the smell. So he will take down a skunk if he's hungry. So that's really cool as well. And these guys are just your regular hoot owls, your ooh, ooh, ooh. And that's exactly what they sound like. They just hoot like a normal owl would. And lastly, here are our 3 species that we get during migration. So in the winter time, these birds are up north during the summer and spring. And then when it starts to get cool, if up north has a really bad winter, these guys will come down to Kentucky, where the food sources that they need are available. We don't have harsh winters here, so we will get some winter migrating birds as well. The one that everyone is familiar with is a snowy owl. Everyone knows what a snowy owl is because of Harry Potter. And we do get a few snowy owls, 1 or 2 in Kentucky every winter. The one at the top is a short-eared owl. They just have short ear tufts. They're shorter. And they have a really unique facial disc as well. These guys will hunt during the day. That's what's pretty special about them as far as owls go. We know that they're nocturnal. They'll come out at dusk time and hunt, but for the most part, they do their hunting at night. But the short-eared owl will hunt during the day over open fields. They like agricultural areas that have kind of grown up with mice running through the fields. And last is our northern saw-whet. And these guys are smaller than the screech owl. They're a little bit smaller, very tiny guys. And I have actually never seen either one of these 3, but this winter I am seeing a short-eared owl. I'm going to go find one. Hopefully, knock on wood, I get to see one. So as far as size goes on these guys, like I said earlier, it's hard to talk about size, but he is small. And females and males in birds of prey are actually, they tend to be different sizes. Our males tend to be smaller. And a lot of people ask, can you tell the difference between male and female raptors? For some, you can. For instance, a kestrel, which is a falcon, you can tell the difference on. In some barn owls, it's kind of obvious. But for the most part, unless they are sitting side by side and one is a little bit bigger than the other one, you can't tell the difference. So females are going to bear more weight than our male owls will. Okay, so I want to talk about some birding spots. So I live in Lexington in central Kentucky, so I do a lot of birding in central. But I did include some other spots throughout Kentucky that I really enjoy going to find birds. So the first one is the Lexington Cemetery. It sounds weird because it's a cemetery, but they are great about planting native species. They consider themselves an arboretum as well, I believe. And they have a whole tab on their website dedicated to people coming to bird at the cemetery, which is really cool. That was one of the first places I went to in college, and we saw so many species that I was shocked. That was where I saw my first barred owl. He was being mobbed by blue jays. If you guys are ever out in the early morning or late evening and you see blue jays and crows dive bombing a tree, there's more than likely a bird of prey in there. That is their way of telling that bird, get out, this is our space, you're not eating us today. So we saw that behavior and watched for a minute, and a barred owl flew across the cemetery. So I really like that spot. It's a good local spot for central Kentucky. Jacobson Park is great. There's lots of birds of prey there. You may get lucky and see a bald eagle there. There have been eagles reported there in the past few years. Below Jacobson Park is a picture of Kentucky Dam Village. So that's in far western Kentucky, sits on Kentucky Lake. That is a fantastic spot for eagles. That's a great spot for some of our marshy birds down there. The habitat is a lot of water and a lot of forests. So in central Kentucky, we have a lot of open fields and farmlands and horse pastures. It's just a different habitat down there, so that's great too. The bottom left picture is Red River Gorge. You can do a lot of stuff at the gorge. If you're hiking, pack your binoculars. You'll see so many species there in the spring and in the summer. It's fantastic. That's a really fun place to go if you're taking a day trip with your family. Grab your field guide, and you'll be surprised at what you could see there. And the last one is Peabody WMA. So Fish and Wildlife has lots and lots and lots of public land. And that land can be used for hunting. It can be used for fishing, but it can also be used for bird watching. So Peabody is a great place to go if you're interested in using our public lands as well. They're free to the public. The sportsmen and women help pay for them. So we definitely encourage you to use those public lands. And down there, I have which counties it's located in: Ohio, Hopkins, and Muhlenberg. So I tried to give Western Kentucky some love, Eastern Kentucky some love, and then Central Kentucky, because you guys are from all over the state. So that is about it. I included on this last slide some resources for you guys. So every picture that I used today was from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. That's my favorite birding resource. They have it down to a science on how to learn about birds. They have lots of resources available for free on their website, as well as Audubon. Everyone pretty much knows about Audubon, but I wanted to put it in there just in case. A couple of you mentioned you wanted some information about the Christmas bird count. So I included that link in there that gives you all the information you need to know. I have actually never participated in that. I'm always out of town on vacation for Christmas. So that's not something I'm super familiar with, but I do have a lot of friends that participate. So follow that link for that. And then I included a link about native plants. So I didn't have time to go over plants. If I had more time, I would, but native plants are really beneficial for pollinators and birds. So lots of birds will eat berries off those plants, will eat acorns, will eat nuts, things like that. So follow that link for some information for that. And then I included some Facebook groups and some apps. So if you learn from watching others or from looking at photos, these are really good ways to learn. The Kentucky Birders group is great on Facebook. It's people that are photographers or birders posting pictures, asking questions, things like that. Bird watching for beginners, that's more of a global group. So if you're interested in birds as a whole, that's a great one because you'll learn about stuff from all over. And what's this bird? And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just people asking, what is this bird that I saw today? And then your apps, Merlin Bird, that's my favorite, but I use pretty much every other app on there. eBird, I got a couple questions about eBird, so I did want to go over that. That is an app where you can track what birds you're seeing where. So if you're looking, let's say you haven't seen a indigo bunting yet, and you want to see one really quickly, you can log onto that app, and if someone has seen one recently, it'll be like pinned where they've seen it, and you can go, as long as it's public land and not private, and look at that. Just remember private land boundaries, of course. So that is all I have for you guys today, and we have about 15 minutes for questions if you would like. Oh, I have a chat. Let's see. Yeah, so Bev, a few minutes ago, sorry, I just now I'm seeing this, said that she had a baby screech owl in a dead tree in her yard. So screech owls are cavity nesters. If you're going to see them, that might be where. They like dead snags. So if there's a hole in a dead tree in your backyard, they may nest in that tree. And that's probably why you saw the babies, because there was a hole in it somewhere that they were nesting in. That's awesome. If you have a question, you can either type it in the chat or you can just ask it out loud, whatever you would like to do. Oh, that was an accident.
I have a question, Rachel.
Yes, go ahead, Elizabeth.
So, can you hear me? What type of owl makes a screaming noise?
That's your barn. That's usually the barn owl. It's eerie. It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Look up the sound. If you downloaded the app, play the sound later and let me know. But that's usually what that is. But bobcats make some crazy noises too. A lot of what people hear at night is going to be bobcats screaming in the woods.
Got a question?
Okay, let's see. Denise said
it was the owl. We were camping in the gorge.
Oh, yeah, it could have been. But yeah, look that up and let me know what you think. Denise says, do you keep a journal of your sightings? That's a really good question. Yes. So I try to keep track of what I see. If it's something I've never seen before. especially when I travel for birding, when I'm going somewhere that has a whole different set of birds than we have here. I definitely keep track of that just so I know what to look for next time I go. So for instance, I have seen a rough-legged hawk out west, or a ferruginous hawk, but I haven't seen other species. So I know that I don't need to be looking for those. If I see one, great. But if I'm looking for something specific, I can narrow my list down. And I always make a list of what I'm looking for when I go. If I'm looking for something specific, especially birds of prey and warblers, smaller things, like really niche things, I try to make a list for, because there's a lot of birds. I think in Kentucky we have more species of birds than we do have days of the year. So things get to be a lot, especially with your warblers, your sparrows, your flycatchers, groups of birds like that. So yeah, I try to keep a journal. When I was in college, I actually drew out every bird that I saw and would make notes where I saw it, when I saw it, what was it doing, and different identifiers on it. And I tried to look for that to show you guys my beautiful artwork, but I could not find it. It must be in my car somewhere. That's a really good question. And yesterday I got a question about what time of day is the best time to go birding. Early in the morning, usually, unless you're looking for owls. So then I would start at dusk. But if you're just going birding for songbirds and stuff like that, early in the morning is your best time to go. I usually try to go about 6:30 or 7. And even that's kind of late. I just can't get up that early. I struggle getting up before 6 a.m. All right, any other questions? Roll them in. Let's see. Olivia, do you have anything?
Sure, I just have a few things while you guys are thinking of other questions for Rachel. Thank you guys for attending not only Rachel's class, but for the virtual weekend too. I am bummed we can't be all together, but this is a good second place event for sure. So thank you guys for signing up. Wanted to remind you all that today at 8 p.m. we're doing a virtual campfire, and that Zoom link is in that packet I sent you guys yesterday in the attachment. So 8 o'clock Eastern time. For those that will be attending, we will be doing a giveaway of a free bow pass that you guys can use either for 2021 or 2022, whenever we can have an in-person bow again too. So usually it's $95. That pass would waive that fee. So we have the virtual campfire tonight, and remember to do that pre-survey if you haven't done so already. It's a Survey Monkey link that was also in that packet. And that just helps us to see, to do the pre-survey and the post-survey after the weekend is done, so we can see how you guys learned over the course of the weekend too. And then also in that packet, we're having an optional devotion tomorrow morning too, early. And that's something we've always done for the in-person classes. So we wanted to continue it this time too. So if you guys have any other questions, you can put it in the chat too. But those were kind of my 3 updates. Rachel, thank you.
Thanks, Liv. Joanne, you raised your hand. What do you got?
I, for years, want to buy a decent pair of binoculars.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is my eyes are not the same, and I have vision issues. So where do you go to get a good pair? Because going to the box stores isn't very helpful.
That's a good question. I have Nikons. There are a lot of brands of binoculars, but Joanne, I would recommend going to an outdoor store, like not a Dick's, but like a local, maybe a hunting store where they have lots of selections of binoculars. Cabela's, I know it's a big box store, but they generally have specialists in each subject of stuff they sell. Birders aren't the only ones that use binoculars. Hunters use them a lot too. So they're generally pretty knowledgeable about the different types, and especially with eyesight issues. Where'd you say you're from, Joanne?
I'm northern Kentucky. I'm south of Cincinnati.
Northern, okay, yeah, I'm not super familiar with that area up there. There's a store in Lexington called J&H Outdoor, and they're locally owned, and they have lots of experts in different subjects, and they sell binoculars and things like that. I recommend you could, I don't think eyeglass stores sell binoculars because I would suggest that, but I would go to a local place, maybe a hunting outdoor store instead of, so Elizabeth says Quest Outdoors or maybe a camera shop from Mary Kay. I didn't think about the camera shops. That might be an option as well, but I would try a local outdoor specialty store where all they sell is hunting and fishing stuff. They'll be able to help you out with that probably.
What was the name of the place in Lexington? I'm only at not even an hour from Lexington.
J&H. Let me.
J&H. Okay.
There's also. Have you ever gone to a Sportsman's Warehouse?
Yes.
And
Cabela's and Dick's, Bass Pro, all those. They're just too generic. They have, they're not helpful when you have, my eyes are different. I have to adjust both eyes. I can't have a single adjustment. And I know it's going to cost money. I'm looking at probably, $300 to $500.
Yeah. So mine, these right here, they're just regular Nikons. They have, I can adjust both eyes on these. So maybe what you're doing is you've gotten a pair. So like Mary Kay put in that she have self-focusing binoculars. Are those okay? So I've never actually used those. I would say that they're probably okay, but where they are self-focusing, you're not able, like Joanne's issue, able to adjust to each eye. It's adjusting to your overall eyesight instead of each eye, I would imagine, and that's going to be your issue. Look, Joanne, do you have a pair of binoculars?
Somewhere, but I can only use one eye on binoculars, so I don't even bother with it. Okay.
So you could also get a monocular. It's a single barrel. If you're only using one eye, that may be more beneficial to you than a pair of binoculars would.
I'll try the place in Lexington. I'll drive down there.
Okay. Sounds great. Okay. Any other questions? Those are really good, guys. Ladies, anything else? Well, we have 10 minutes left. I will stay on in case anyone wants to chat or has any more questions. If you would like to go, what is the rarest sighting in Kentucky? Oh, hey, so Joanne, Bev says Field and Stream in Florence may be helpful.
They're actually in Crescent Springs, and it's they're not. I just have eye issues. I need a real, because anybody can get a job at those places. They don't really have specialty. Yeah. So I'll try Lexington. That'll work.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully, I hope they can help you. And I don't know. I'll think about it. If I think of any other options, I'll email you, Joanne. Okay. I'll think about it. That's good.
I've been wanting a pair for probably 20, 30 years.
Okay.
Vortex has really good customer service.
Vortex?
I know Vortex's customer service is like...
Alex is saying if you would like to call the brand Vortex, they have great customer service and they're really knowledgeable about this stuff as well. So he recommends that. And they may be able to point you in the direction of somebody local to help you out.
All right, I'll try that. Thanks.
Awesome. So Mary Kay asked, what is the rarest sighting? Okay, that's a good question. The snowy owls are a pretty rare sighting, and people go crazy to try to see one of those. Honestly, what comes to mind is going to be a snowy owl. We do get golden eagles that come through Kentucky in the wintertime, and that's a pretty rare sighting as well. They're not here in the summer. They're only here for maybe a month or two in the winter, and that's if they hang around for very long. But I would say those two are probably two of the rarest sightings. It's a good question. Very good. Okay. I used to live in Alaska. Oh, you used to live in Alaska. Oh, so you're super familiar with eagles then, because they are everywhere up there. I don't know about goldens, but I know bald eagles are everywhere. They pick the trash out of people's backyards.
First one I saw had a bag of Fritos in its mouth.
See, it's crazy. They act like crows do here. They're
Except when you have to be careful where you park there because it's like a condor it's more than your windshield that gets messed up. Your whole car.
I have seen pictures of bald eagles perched around the bed of a truck, and there's just poop all in the bed of the truck where they've sat there all day long. Yeah.
You need a fire hose.
We're, in Kentucky, our bald eagle population is substantially growing year by year. So we're grateful to see eagles, but the farther north you go, the more people are like, these bald eagles won't go away, it's so funny. It's how it depends on where you live. But yeah, that's great.
They are beautiful.
They are, yeah.
They're so huge. It's amazing.
They are. They're very big.
But they're messy.
Yeah. We have one back at Salado, and when he goes. It's a lot. All right. Any other questions? Thank you guys, like Olivia said, for tuning in. I know this virtual stuff is kind of weird, but we're really grateful that so many people signed up and tuned in. It's not super early, but it's early enough to still be groggy. So I really appreciate you guys participating and asking so many questions. 5 minutes left. You can go ahead and log off. Yeah. What's your question?
What this time of year, what should we be looking for? I know the hummingbirds are leaving, right?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff is leaving. Our spring migrators are going back home, but what's going to happen? So we have a lot of birds that stay here all year round. So your blue jays, your cardinals, those first few birds I talked about, we pretty much have all year round. Chickadees, things like that. Your tanagers, your grosbeaks are gone. Those birds are gone. But what's going to happen is we're going to get a few winter species. We're going to get not a lot, but we're going to get quite a few winter migrators through here as well. So if I had a suggestion, it is September. I would start looking at your range map for winter migrators. So a winter wren, some sparrow species come in the wintertime. A white crowned sparrow, a lot of people get those in their backyards. In a couple of months, you'll start seeing those. So yeah, we're going to lose a lot of birds, but we're going to gain some as well. Wintertime is some of the best time for eagle viewing, you guys. Birds of prey in the wintertime are much easier to see than they are in the summertime because the trees don't have leaves. So if you are interested in birding in the winter, I recommend looking for eagles. The department and Kentucky State Parks usually partners up to do eagle tours in Western Kentucky every winter because there's so many eagles that we have all year round. And then our birds from up north migrate down as well. So we have a lot of eagles hanging out here in the wintertime. I don't know if we're going to do those tours or not, but that's what I would suggest is start looking at your winter migrators and get ready for an influx of some raptors this winter. Oh.
And some friends of ours saw, I want to say pelicans.
Yeah.
On one of the lakes.
Yep, Kentucky Lake. Yep, white pelicans. Yeah, and you'll see them. Sometimes people see them on Barkley. Sometimes people see them on different lakes. But yeah, we get white pelicans here in the wintertime as well in Western Kentucky. I've seen quite a few down there.
Is there a certain time to look for that? They just happened to be where they were by accident and said it was
pelicans. That's a good question. I usually see them down there in January and February. Is usually when I start seeing them when I'm down in Western Kentucky. I don't live there, so I don't see them as often as people that live there do. But when I go down for eagle tours, they're always there. If you're ever in Western Kentucky, the Kentucky Dam Village, the dam that's right next to it is where the pelicans usually hang out. There were like 15 of them sitting there one day. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's a good place. And if you join the Kentucky Birders group, you guys, they will post any sort of like rare-ish sighting. So like pelicans are always posted on there. Okay. Joanne, did you have another question or is that your hand raised from earlier? Oh, I couldn't hear you, sorry.
earlier.
Okay.
Early.
All righty then. Okay, well, we will go ahead and end this meeting. If you guys need any help with anything, or if you want suggestions or anything like that, feel free to email me. My email is the one I emailed you guys from earlier in the month. Thank you, Mary Kay. I really appreciate that. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you want, I can send this PowerPoint out, but this was recorded, so it's going to go back onto the BOE website where you guys originally signed up for classes, I believe, with your pre-class resources. That's where this will be at eventually. So if you want to, you can come back in and view it if you missed something, or if you wanted to look at those pictures again, that'll be available for you all. Thank you so much, Joanne. Good luck in finding those binoculars. I would thank you, Samantha. I really appreciate that. Have a great weekend. Joanne, I would call Vector first before you travel. That's a good idea. Vortex. I'm sorry, I said Vector. I meant Vortex. Yeah.
I like to
Vortex.
travel.
Yeah. I would call them before you travel, but yeah, definitely try that. And thank you, Terry. I really appreciate that. And thanks, Denise. Have you tried talking to your eye doctor about where to get them from?
Oh yeah, yes.
They just don't know.
I'm 67. I've been dealing with this for a long
Forever.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an issue I have to deal with. But I just never knew of a really good place, I'll try the place in Lexington. Plus I can stop at that cemetery and check it out.
Yeah. But let me make sure that they have binoculars in stock before you drive all the way there. Let me look.
I'll Google them.
Okay. Yeah. If you want, call them before you head that way. But yeah, if you're going to go to Lexington anyway, look up. Let me see. Before you go, let's see. Oh, so Best Buy. I know they're a big box store, but I think they have binoculars as well. I think they do. But you probably have a Best Buy where you live, so that's not.
That's online. Yeah.
Oh, here's where you need to go. I figured it out. Wild Birds Unlimited.
Okay.
Wild Birds Unlimited. You probably have one in Northern Kentucky. They're usually set up in populous spaces. Try that. That's going to be your best bet. That's where you need to go. They are experts. Like, they know their stuff.
I'll try them.
Okay. Sounds great. All right. For those of you that are left, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your classes. I might see you if you're taking the venison and fish cooking class. Might not. Enjoy the bonfire. Tell some great stories for me because I won't be able to be there. But I will go ahead and end this, and hopefully I'll see or hear from you guys soon, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Bye.